Rabbi, I feel very strange. I'm in my shul, which has about over 600 seats. They're all empty. The shul is locked. Who am I speaking to? Myself. I'm speaking to myself, and anyone who wants to listen can listen. This coronavirus situation is not the first time that something like this has happened in history. In 1955, I believe, there was an Asian flu. It was a new flu, also came from Asia. None of the doctors knew how to deal with it. The Rabbanim in New York said that anyone who has fever, it was on Yom Kippur, it was from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, anyone who has fever should eat less than the shear even though he feels okay. They had a cholera outbreak in the times of Yisroel Salanta about 150 years ago. Many tens of thousands of people died. And it was also happened during the time of Yom Kippur. Now the story that I'm going to tell you now, I heard from my Rosh Hashiva, Rabban Kotler Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. And he said that Rabbi Yisroel Salanta said that everyone should eat on Yom Kippur, whether they have it or not, because he felt that if someone is not in his optimum health, he might contract this disease, the cholera disease, and it might overcome him easier than if he was healthy. He told the chazan that he should make kiddush in shul, kiddush Yom Kippur night. The night of Yom Kippur. So one of the Baal Batim came over to him and he said, Rebbe, if you say we have to eat, okay, I understand that, but to make kiddush on Yom Kippur, how could you say something like that? So Rabbi Yisroel Salanta said to him, you Am Haaretz, you're telling me how to paskin? Now that was so out of the norm that Rabbi Yisroel Salanta would say that. He was so careful, especially in things which are bein Adam l'chaveroi, to call someone an Am Haaretz in front of the whole shul. But he was worried that if he didn't come out strongly and say, like would say, look, I understand your point, but I don't think that, I disagree, which would be maybe the normal thing which he would have said. He don't want anyone to think that there's any question over here whether you're allowed to eat on Yom Kippur or not. So even though Mishnah Berurah said you don't make kiddush on Yom Kippur, even someone who has to eat, who is actually in sakana and must eat on Yom Kippur, he does make kiddush. But he did that in order to everyone should understand that this year one must eat. So this year also we should take care of our health and make sure that we're in good health so that if someone actually would chas v'shalom get this coronavirus, maybe he'll be stronger in order to be able, his body and his immune system will be able to combat it in a better way than if he's worn down. After everything is over and things go back to normal, what will we have learned from this whole episode of this coronavirus? If we don't learn anything from it, what is the use that the Rebbe Shalom sent it to us? One of the things that we learned is that you do not have to have 400 people at a wedding. You can actually make a wedding with 10 people. Or at any other simcha, bris, pidyon haben. You don't even need a minyan at the bris. You don't need a minyan at a pidyon haben, even though it would be better if there was one. Maybe we should have learned that it doesn't make any difference what our clothes look like. They don't have to be up to the latest fashion. They don't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter. These things are not even secondary. They're maybe third place, fourth place. We don't have to go to a hotel for Pesach. We can actually make Pesach in our own houses. As a matter of fact, there are some people who cannot make Pesach in their house and they're very disadvantaged. And for them, the hotel is an option. But for regular people, a hotel really is not good for Yiddishkeit. Not because there's anything wrong with a hotel. I don't know what goes on in a hotel. But a butcher told me that this woman who is treif the whole year for Pesach will only eat kosher Pesach meat. In the supermarkets, people, they eat treif and they will eat matzah on Pesach. Why is that? Why is Pesach more important to people than eating kosher or being a frum yid all the time? Because when this person's great-grandmother were prepared for Pesach, and all the work that she put in to clean the house, to prepare the Seder, to make sure everything is perfect for Yontif, it made an impression on his grandmother. So even though the grandmother was not as scrupulous as the great-grandmother, but she also made sure she'd keep a good Pesach. And that made an impression on this person's mother. It made an impression on them. So even though they already didn't eat kosher, but Pesach, they understood how important Pesach was. And all this gets lost when we go to a hotel. They don't say anything. They just look at it like a vacation. So we have to be careful that when anything goes back to normal, we do not lose these lessons. They should become part of us. They say over in the name of Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky that the doctors are recommending people stay away 6 feet away from each other. People should stay home. We have been separated from everyone else. We find in the Torah this concept by a Matzah. The Torah says, "Bodod yeshev michutz hamachane moishavai." Why? Rashi says, because this person, with his Lashon Hara, he's separated between a husband and a wife, between the one Yid and another Yid, between one person and another person. So his punishment, midah keneged midah, is that he also should be separated. So therefore, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky said that what we have to do now is make sure that we get along with each other. In the midst of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, we should be very careful. Every Yid should get along with another Yid. Yidden should get along with our neighbors. Yidden should get along with their business people. And if your religious beliefs are more stringent or less stringent than someone else, that's not a reason why there should be separation between people. We are all creations of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and we should make it a point to get along with each other. And that's the message over here of this coronavirus. Now, there's some questions over here which I have been asked to answer, and I'll try my best. Now, of course, everyone should turn to his own Rav for answers to these questions, but if he doesn't have a Rav, he or she does not have a Rav, or if it's not enough time to go and get hold of a Rav, then maybe you might consider what I'm saying. If one needs to go to the hospital on Shabbos, what is the best way to do it? Now, this is a general question, and it doesn't really have to do too much with the coronavirus. If one has to go to the hospital on Shabbos, which is the best way to do it? Through an Uber, a cab, Hatzolah, themselves, or neighbors. Now, if it is possible to go through a non-Jew, that is the preferred way to do it. The rule is when Shabbos has to be desecrated, if it is possible to do it without any hesitation through a non-Jew, so then as preferred. If not, you're allowed to do it through a Yid. So if the Uber services and a cab are both non-Jews, they would be preferable. Now, which one is better? Now, someone who has an Uber account doesn't have to have anything doesn't need to pay anything. Maybe there's less Chil Shabbos involved with the Uber than with a cab. But if someone doesn't have an Uber account, so then he doesn't have too much of a choice. Now, Hatzolah, if the Hatzolah's ambulance is driven by a non-Jew, that will be preferable. If it's driven by a Jew, it doesn't make any difference if it's Hatzolah themselves or neighbors, because if it's a case where you're allowed to be Machal Shabbos, because it's a case of an emergency where life may be in danger, so then either one of them can be done, whichever one is more practical. If there's a question of time, maybe the Hatzolah ambulance will be able to get there earlier, maybe not. Maybe if they go themselves, it is better. All depends on the situation. Are there any changes in the way women should go to the hospital because of the dangers of the coronavirus? Now, as far as tznius goes, there shouldn't be any difference. And if there's, hopefully the people who are taking this person this woman to the hospital are not people that have had any contact with the people who have had to do with this coronavirus. But if they do, I'm sure that they would should be wearing masks and other precautions to make sure that they would not infect someone else. And this is not true with women. This is the same way with men also. If a hospital or doctor's office has a limited amount of supplies, i.e. ventilators, etc., what are the ramifications of Halacha as to who gets the treatment? Does it go by age, health, prestige, etc.? All right, so this is a very, not such a simple question. One thing is mentioned in the tshuva from Rav Moshe Feinstein, who discusses this, and the tshuva is in Chosh Mishpat, Chelik Beis, Siman Ayin Gimel, paragraph Beis, and he says that whoever comes first to the hospital should get treated first. It doesn't matter whether this person can only live for another couple of days. It doesn't matter, and the second one could live for longer. That's only a question of they come together at the same time. That if whoever comes first should be treated first. And once they treat him, they should not take him off, even though that the other person has more chances of living than this person. Again, where there are limited supplies, how does a family decide who takes precedence in receiving treatment if children, parents, grandparents are affected? So, as I said, these are the difficult questions. I remember there was a case where Siamese twins were born and they were connected at the heart, the two of them. The heart had 6 chambers. The normal heart has 4 chambers. It had 6. And they could separate them. They didn't have too much chance of living if they were together, but if they were separated, so one of them would have to die. And the question was, which one would get the 2 chambers, would not be able to live, the other one would get the 4 chambers, would be able to live. Who do you give the 4 chambers to, and who do you give the 2 chambers to? So the Gemara discusses a case. If people come, they say, if you give us this person to kill, and then we'll let you live, otherwise we'll kill out the whole town. So you're allowed to give them that person and save the whole town. If they say, give us one of you to kill, or we'll kill out the whole town, you're not allowed to give them the one person. Who are you to decide who is the one? Why is one person less important than the others? And the whole town will have to be killed. So it's not a simple question. So that question was actually, in that case, with the Siamese twins, Rav Moshe Feinstein gave a psak over there, and what happened was that one of them didn't really have too much of a chance to live, even if he would get the 4. So therefore, Rav Moshe Feinstein passed in such a case, it's like they have already, the Rebbeinu Shalom has already pointed that this is the one who should be killed, and therefore the one should die, and therefore they were allowed to give it to the other one. Is a doctor or nurse allowed to put themselves in a place of danger to help others? No, not really. Why is the other person more important than he himself? If he's going to put himself in danger, he doesn't have to do that. What about family members for each other? Same thing. However, the doctor or nurse have a job over here. And if that's their job, and they understood it in the very beginning, so they can, and this is what they're asked to do, since you're not allowed to put yourself in danger, so I'm not sure they can take a job like that. But if they can have safeguards that the danger is very minimized, so then they will be allowed to do that. With the overarching threat of coronavirus, what are the halachas of vitamins and medications on Shabbos? Are we more lenient because of the need to boost the body and keep it healthy even when a person is not obviously ill? Now, what I'm going to say now is not going to make a lot of people happy, but I think it is the truth. The United States government does not promote vitamins. They say that certain things are unhealthy, like smoking is unhealthy. They say when it comes to, they have taken all these precautions with the coronavirus situation, but the government does not recommend that a person take vitamin pills. They say you should eat a healthy diet, and you'll get all the vitamins that you need. So as a matter of fact, there was a study in Hopkins University that came out, which I saw quite a few years ago, that said that if you take vitamins every day, you're 14% more likely to die that year than if you don't take any vitamins. So the vitamins is not so simple. So if there would be convincing evidence that if you take vitamins, that you are stronger, even though normally you're not allowed to take something to strengthen the body's constitution, but in such a case where we're dealing with the sakana, it would certainly be permitted, even though it's not for sure that this is going to have any effect. But if it could have an effect, it would be permitted. And even though the person is not obviously ill. But since it's not so clear that you really need it, unless someone has a vitamin deficiency, where of course there he has to take a vitamin, so then I would say that we go like you do most of the time, and we say that the person should not take vitamins. Can we be makel regarding adults doing puzzles on Shabbos to help avoid cabin fever on Shabbos? There were, during World War II, there were some people who were in hiding and lived in an attic or in a dungeon for 5 years. What do they do with the cabin fever? Evidently, they survived it. They're still around. Some are still around today. So cabin fever is not really considered a sickness, unless someone, maybe if he has mental problems, could be that for him it could get into depressed, and maybe if he gets into real depression, it may be considered sakons nefashos. But otherwise, there's no, if someone have cabin fever on Shabbos, as long as he comes out alive, everything will be fine. No kulas. How do we paskin regarding the first Yikum Purkan? Do we recite it when davening b'yechidus? We do not say the first Yikum Purkan, and we do not say the second Yikum Purkan, and we do not say the Mishaberach afterwards. The Mishaberach is not said because it's said for the tzibur. Mishaberach Avseinu Yivos Kol HaKol HaKadosh Hazeh. And so that doesn't apply if a person davening b'yechidus. We don't say the other Yikur, the second Yikur Purkan, which is also for the tzibur, because we're not davening with the tzibur. The first Yikur Purkan you do not say because it's said in Lashon Arami, it's in Aramaic, and all tefillos in Aramaic are not said b'yechidus, because if someone doesn't b'yechidus, he needs malachim to bring the tefillos in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and malachim do not want to have anything to do with people who speak Aramaic, because they consider it a deformed type of Lashon HaKodesh. That's what it says in Mishnah Berurah. Can kinyonim for mechiras chametz be done online? Okay, so there are two types of mechiras chametz, kinyonim for mechiras chametz. One is the kinyon, which typically the one who owns the chametz makes with the rav who's going to sell it for him. And basically the kinyon is to appoint the rav to give him power of attorney to sell the chametz, which belongs to this person who's making a shliach. So that kinyan is not really required by halacha. It's the meaning to do it, but in case that it's not, you can appoint him over the phone, you can appoint him by email, as long as the Rav knows that he's being appointed. Now the kinyanim which the Rav does with the non-Jew who buys the chametz, that's different. That you can't do. That you need them, and he cannot do that over the phone. So the Rav will find a way how to do it. If doing the harsha by one's Rav to sell the chametz this year cannot be done face to face, what's the best way to do it? Authorized by email? Yes, you could authorize it by email. Telephone? Yes. But the Rav will need your signature, that any signature which is valid in the law of the United States, that he's authorized to sell your chametz for you, and that he's authorized to rent the places in which the chametz is to the non-Jew, so that is for that you need a authorization by whichever way is considered authorization according to the law of the land. Can one rely on lenient opinions and take vitamins that aren't certified for Pesach? All right, so someone who just takes vitamins because that's his minhag to take vitamins the whole year. So no, there's no reason to be mekel. And a regular person who doesn't have any shortage, vitamin deficiency, he will be able, Mirz Hashem, to survive the 8 days of Pesach without taking any vitamins. If he does have vitamin deficiency and he needs the vitamins for his health, so then it's not a yes or no answer. It depends which vitamin it is, what the chances are that you could have hummus and doesn't have hummus in it. And so everyone should ask their own Rav or Kashrus agency to find out this information. May one buy hummus before Pesach with intent of selling it to a guy, as it may be difficult to buy after Pesach? In general, if you sell the hummus before Pesach to the guy with the express intent that he doesn't eat it and he doesn't sell it, but he should sell it back to you, and that if you make a condition that you have to buy it back, the whole sale is not valid. If you don't make a condition, but you want that the hummus should be here, there are different opinions in the poskim whether it helps at all selling to a guy under those kind of conditions. So therefore, if there will be no food to eat, maybe we'll have to think about, maybe we can find a heter to do it a certain way. But Baruch Hashem, it doesn't look like people are going to starve to death. Why can't a person buy more matzahs before Pesach so that he'll be able to, you're allowed to eat matzahs after Pesach. As a matter of fact, some people don't eat any chametz until Shavuos. You're not over on Baal Tosef if you eat matzahs after Pesach, as long as you don't have intention of being kind of fulfilling a mitzvah after Pesach. So that's not a reason to buy. One should not do that. One should not buy chametz before Pesach for after Pesach. Can one hook up their seder via Skype to an elderly person who is forced to be on their own, because that will help to relieve anxiety, stress, depression at a time like this? In general, unless it's a case of sakanas nefashos to this person who's going to be in depression if they can't be on Skype. If it's not a case of sakana, there's no way that this is permitted, because you're not allowed to say things on the phone on Shabbos. You're not allowed to talk on the phone on Shabbos. You're not allowed to, even if you don't say a word. If you're on Skype and people can see you, it is a type of ksiva. If you paint a picture or you take a photo, it's considered ksiva on Yontif, which is forbidden. Can you say Amen to a bracha over live video? Yes, I believe you can. The Gemara says that the Gemara in Sukkah said in Alexandria they had a shul that was so big that the people in the back of the shul couldn't hear the chazan because it was so far away. So they had someone who stood up in the middle of the shul with a flag, and when he waved it the first time, so the people knew that after Shemona Esrei, the people knew he said Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avraham, and they answered Amen. And when he waved it the second time, he said Baruch atah Hashem Chai HaMesim, even though they couldn't hear it, but they knew that what the Chazan was saying, and therefore they could answer Amen. So over here, if you hear it over a live video, so you know that the person said the bracha, so you're allowed to answer Amen. But if it's from a videotape, so he didn't say it, so then you cannot answer Amen. What is the aveira of answering Amen if you're not mechuyev to answer Amen? It's not you didn't say the name of the Rebbeinu Shalom, but nothing, you just said Amen. Amen is a davar shebekedusha, and if someone says Amen when it's not required, he's being machalel a davar shebekedusha, which is considered something which is forbidden, and one cannot do it. Just like you can't say Kaddish if there's no minyan, even though there's no Shem Levatol over here, you can't say Kedusha if there's no minyan for the same reason. What are the options for a Siyum B'chayrim on Erev Pesach? Can one use video conferencing or teleconferencing to avoid fasting? Yes, I believe you can do that, because if you hear the person saying it over the telephone, you know that he's saying this, he's finishing this Gemara or whatever he's finishing. You know that he's doing it, and you are considered participating in this siyum. And when you start to eat, you don't really. A person can make a siyum by himself. You don't need anyone else be over there to go with you. But you should have something special at the meal that you're eating, not the regular breakfast that you have, but it will be something special you have for the siyum, and that's permitted. If kelim mikvahs are closed, what are the other options regarding new kelim, including use of snow? Now, in most cases, I don't think that there'll be enough snow to be told anything, unless you told a needle or something. But no, even that, you need 40 saw of snow. So 40 saw is about 200 gallons it's approximately 200 gallons of water. And snow has to be enough that after it melts, it'll make 200 gallons of water. So you're talking about a significant amount of snow, which is unlikely, which is uninterrupted. So if they plow the road in the middle, so then you can't. It has to be connected snow. That's the way that it falls. And should be at least 2.5 inches high. So I don't think that snow is really an option. Now, if you live near the ocean, you could tovel it in the ocean. If you live near a river, which has water throughout the whole year, summer and winter, then you could tovel in the river. If you live near a lake, it depends, because if the lake is a natural lake, then it probably has an inlet. There's some stream which is feeding this lake, and then you could tovel in it. If it is a man-made lake, and which is probably all either runoff water or rainwater, then if it runs out somewhere, then it's zeichlin, and it would not be kosher to tovel kelim in it. Can you kasha glass for Pesach this year? I remember that when we used to kasha glass, we used to take. Now these are glasses which you can't put on the fire. It's not Pyrex. It is the regular glasses which would never be put on the fire. You pour hot coffee in it. Sometimes you put postum in it. A postum is real chametz, I believe. And so that you put them in water. You fill with water for 24 hours, pour out the water, fill it again with water for another 24 hours, and do the same thing a third time, and you could use it. So not everyone agrees that this is something which you can do, but the minhag it was to do it. The Achronim say that you should only do it if glass is not available. So to use glass without toveling is not really so much of an option, even though that we'll maybe discuss later some options. And so therefore you could kasher them if necessary. But if you have things which are used on the fire, like for instance Pyrex, so that you cannot kasher, you only can kasher them. Rav Yashiv says you can kasher them by putting 3 times into boiling hot water like you kasher everything else. If someone bought new pots and needs to tovel but is afraid to use the kale mikveh, can they use a lake? Okay, so we discussed that already, that not all lakes are kosher. You should ask your local Rav if the lake that you are near that you want to use is kosher. Or we makna them to a guy. So no, you cannot be makna them to the guy unless you give it to the guy, and then it's his. But if you makna to the guy and then you keep it, so the Taz says that it doesn't help, because the guy sees that he's not getting it, so therefore, even if you thought he was getting it originally, now he sees he's not getting it, so he relinquishes his kinyan, goes back to you, and doesn't help. If yes, what is the best method of kinyan? The answer is no, you can't do it. What should be done when the mikveh reopens regarding toveling with or without a bracha? Okay, so there's a sefer called Tvilas Kalim from Rav Tzvi Cohen. He brings over there from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that b'shas hadchak, in a case of necessity, if it's very important that you can rely on, if you buy it from a non-Jew, that you're mechaven to take it from him, you pay him for it, but you're mechaven not to be kainet. So now it doesn't belong to you, so therefore you could use it without tvila. And if you buy it from a Jewish person, so then, even if you're not mechaven to be kainet, you still need tefillah, so you should be mechaven to be kainet, and then you make a statement in front of 3 people that you are mafkarit, you're making it ownerless, and then you take it, and your intent should be not to acquire it. And then it's potter from tefillah, b'shas hadchak. Later, when a mikveh will be available to use, then you should intend to you pick it up and you intend to acquire it, and then you toil it with a bracha. Can one kasher plastics? Okay, so there are different opinions about that. My understanding is that I asked Rav Moshe Feinstein this question, and he said that you should not tovel plastic. Rav Yashiv says in the Sefer, brought down in the Sefer Ashrei Yoish, that says you should not kasher plastics. My understanding is that the Weiss, who was the Rav of the Eda Charedis in Yerushalayim, said you could kasher plastic. So there's different opinions. So you ask your local Rav what his opinion is. Are there any leniencies regarding kashering pots or cutlery with handles? Now, if the handles are made out of metal and the pots are made out of metal, you can kasher them as long as you make sure that there is nothing between the handle and the pot, which that they should be completely clean. If not clean, you would have to burn out any residue that's between the handle and the pot, which is very common. In general, if they're plastic handles, which that's very common, so it's my thinking the plastic doesn't get hot. That's why they make the handles out of plastic, and the top of the lids they make out of plastic, because so that you should be able to pick it up. So if it doesn't get hot, so then it didn't become chumstick. So you can kasher it. You just put the whole thing into the hot water, and it'll be all right. Finding shmura matzah is difficult for individuals not living in the New York, New Jersey area. If one only has machine shmura matzah, how much should they try to get hand matzah if their minig is to use hand matzah at the Seder? I.e., find someone who's coming in and have them go to a store. It's interesting that hand matzah has an advantage over machine matzahs to use at the Seder, because there are opinions that say that you need lishma, that they have to be made especially for the matzah for Pesach in order to mekayim the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach. That has nothing to do with eating matzah for the rest of Pesach, where it doesn't have to be lishma. As long as it's not chametz, it's fine. So the machine matzah, even though today the machines are very advanced, but they still cannot think to make it lishma at the time that you're making the matzah. So you don't have that. On the other hand, machine matzahs have an advantage that the machine treats all the matzah equally. So the machine is set up that the whole matzah, as from the time that the water hits the flour until the time it goes into the oven is less than 18 minutes, it'll be the same for every matzah. When you deal with hand matzahs, each one is done individually. And just because one of them is made you can make it in 9 minutes, doesn't mean to say the next one's going to be made in 9 minutes. So it's much more difficult to keep tabs on it. So both of them have their advantages. The Badats in Yerushalayim for many years only gave hashgacha to machine matzahs because they felt they can control that. But it was very difficult to control hand matzahs. There were Gedolim who felt that machine matzahs are better than hand matzahs. There were Gedolim, like Reb Chaim Tzanzer and others, who felt that you should only eat hand matzahs, not machine matzahs. So both of them have their advantages. So if they can't get hand matzahs, so then you may have to matzah neder. You go to your Rav who will direct you how to do that, and you'll eat the machine shmura matzah. If one has no shmura matzah other than the bare minimum for the Seder, what is the best hanhaga regarding eating non-shmura matzah? Can one eat it or should one not wash? If you feel it's important that you should eat matzah, then you could be matzah neder unless you have a family tradition, you could be matzah neder. Otherwise, you should not wash, but you got to wash for Shabbos and you got to wash for Yom Tov, so you're going to have some problems. In a situation that families are out on walks with social distancing, and there happens to be a minyan between all the men who are out on walks or on their porches, should they say any davar shebikdusha, these people, or should it not be done as to not have men plan such meetings in the future? Now this is something which you have to ask locally, the Rabbanim, whether they are against this or not. Over here in Baltimore, our position was that there should not be any minyanim, not inside the shuls and not outside the shuls, not anyone's backyards. We feel that it causes, the goyim will look at it very unfavorably, because they'll say that you're not careful, you make these meetings, and because of that, the disease is spreading, and they'll blame it on the Jews. So it should not be done at all. And and if they're doing something which should not be done, you should not have anything to do with it. Would it be considered a minyan if two neighboring families daven on their individual back porches? Well, there's one question of whether it's considered a minyan. The second question is whether they should do that or not. So I already said that over here the combined decision of all the Rabbanim was that they should not do it, no minyanim. But if it's not in a case where we have this kind of virus situation, as long as they see each other, they could be considered a Matzah to be a minion. Since most barbers are closed, do people still have to go the full sphere without a haircut? No, they don't have to go the full sphere without a haircut. They can take a haircut on Black Ba'omer if they want, and if they would have to go the full sphere without a haircut, I think that most people will survive and be able to live through until Erev Shavuos. In small cities where Pesach food is in short supply, can one eat kidneys? Look, I don't think, maybe in some places in Africa, maybe you'd have this question, but over here in the United States, even if Pesach food is in short supply, but there's plenty of fruit and vegetables that people can eat, and it's not the situation where one could eat kidneys. If yes, would one be required to do Ataras Nadarim? No. If you be allowed to do it, because there is nothing to eat and people would starve, so they would never makabel on themselves not to eat kidneys in such a situation. In the light of the coronavirus, what are the parameters of Chol Sheyesh Bo Sakana and Chol She'ein Bo Sakana? One should be careful not to have any contact with people in general because maybe they have had connection with the coronavirus. It's considered a Chol Sheyesh Bo Sakana for sure, and one should do whatever you can to stay away from this. In light of our current situation, what is the parameter of Pikuach Nefesh? It is Pikuach Nefesh. What are the precautions that one should take that are dictated not just by medicine but also by Halacha? Whatever the doctors say, if the doctors say there's a sakana, we should consider a sakana. If the doctors say people should stay away from each other, that's what we should do. These are things which are the halacha goes after what the doctors tell us, because they're the ones who understand better than anyone else what's considered a sakana, what's not. What are the parameters that people should put into place when deciding whether or not to have family and guests for Pesach? So, someone has, he's by himself, and he doesn't have the ability or the wherewithal to make Pesach by himself. He is really a poor person, and if someone doesn't invite him, he'll starve. So such a person is a mitzvah to take him, but he really should go into seclusion for a couple of weeks before to make sure that he's not a carrier of the virus. Basically, if it's a necessity, then you can have them. If it's not a necessity, with family or guests, if it's not a necessity, you should stay away from it. This is the last question. Is the second day of Yom Tov more lenient than the first day? Yes, it is more lenient. One is that you're allowed to take things which are refuah on the second day of Yom Tov. There's a halacha every second day of Yom Tov, not just because of the situation we're in now. And the second thing is that if someone dies on the second day of Yom Tov, then the Yidden are allowed to take care of him, which most places in America we don't do that anymore because they're only allowed to take care of him as much as is needed for the person who dies to bury him, including taking him to a cemetery and digging a grave and everything else that will be necessary. But since today it's very difficult to control, and there'll be many people who would desecrate the Yom Tov, not according to the halacha, so therefore basically it's been accepted in America by most places that they do not make a funeral, not on the first day of Yom Tov, not on the second day of Yom Tov, especially since we have today ways that the deceased will not decay. There we have coolers refrigerators where we could put them in, so it's not really there's not really such a pressure to have them buried fast as it was in former times. I want to end with one thought. It says in the Tillim, I think it's Kapitel Yutes, Mizmor Asaf. This is a song for Asaf. Also the name of a person. Elokim bo goim lachosecha. Rebbeinu Shalom, goim have come into your place. Timus heichal kadshecha. They've defiled your Beis Hamikdash. Somewhere Yerushalayim le'iyim. They have made desolate the city of Yerushalayim. It's talking about the Churban. So Rashi asks a question. Why is this Mizmor Asaf? This is a song. This should be a lamentation of Asaf, not a song. So the answer is Shafach Hamosai Aleitzim Vavonim. The Rebbeinu Shalom poured out his wrath on the Beis Hamikdash, which is made out of stones and wood. Shafach Hamosai Basavadam. Because of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, which was a terrible punishment for Klal Yisrael. They didn't have this place to daven in anymore. To the Rebbeinu Shalom, didn't have a place where they could bring korbanos which would atone on their sins. So the Rebbeinu Shalom gave them that punishment, and saved their lives that way. They didn't have to be killed for what they'd done wrong. So I think that this concept applies today also. To my understanding, most of the shuls, the vast majority of shuls, are closed. It's a terrible punishment for us. We can't daven. Davening is the whole strength of Klal Yisrael. Whenever they are in trouble, we beseech the Rebbeinu Shalom to help us. The Rebbeinu Shalom listens to our tefillah much more when we daven together with a minyan in shul than if we daven at home, each one separately. So the shul is considered Beis Mikdash Ma'at. It's considered like a miniature Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbeinu Shalom basically has destroyed the Beis Mikdash Ma'at not by knocking it down, not by burning it down, but by the fact that it's made it that people cannot go there. Darchei Tzion Avelos, the roads of Yerushalayim are like there's no one there. Mibli boi mayit, as Yontif, and no one comes to the Beis Hamikdash. So over here also, that no one's coming to the Beis Mikdash Ma'at. But the Rebbeinu Shalom did it to save our lives. So here also, the Rebbeinu Shalom has done this to us. It's a very difficult time for us. Everyone's upset about it, but the Rebbeinu Shalom has done it to save our lives. But we have to do our part and make sure that we are careful and say and do whatever the doctors are telling us to do to help save our lives, not just the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom has closed all the shuls. The Rebbeinu Shalom should help that this should pass over as quickly as possible, and for the Rebbeinu Shalom everything is possible. Maybe if the Rebbeinu Shalom, if he wants, he could do this, and that we should be able to come back and daven in our shuls and be safe from any danger. Amen. Thank you.